Good afternoon. My name is Marcia Stromgren. You have tuned into Just the Facts. And I have in the studio today Art Johnston, former school board member of the 4th District in the city of Duluth. Thanks, Art, for coming in.
Great to be here again, Marcy. Always fun.
We have another subject to talk about that is not associated with this Duluth School District, but it has to do with articles that were in the Duluth News Tribune, and we'll get around to how important this is to the school district once we've covered a little bit of this information. Now, this was April 2nd, 2018, and the headline is, "A Duluth woman fined by state campaign board. A Duluth woman who served as treasurer for the 7th Senate District DFL party in Duluth has been ordered to pay a $12,000 civil fine for violating state campaign finance statutes."
Marcy, you have the date wrong on that.
I see, okay. So, I'm sorry, that's November 17th, 2010, Duluth News Tribune. Now, Art, you are aware of this because you were in the DFL party here in the 7th District, correct?
Yes, I wasn't at the time, but I did get elected to their board shortly after this happened.
Okay. Now, from the information that has been given here, a total of $22,833 was what she had taken illegally. Is that correct?
Now, I think it's important, Marcy, to say that all we're doing is reading here what was reported. You have 4 reports there. One was a Duluth News Tribune article. Other one is from an attorney representing the Senate District 7, and that's where the numbers that you just have came from. And there's also, we have 2 reports from the Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board of the state of Minnesota. So those are all the data. All that we know is what's in that data, or what's in those reports. So beyond that, I don't know anything about it. I was not on the board at the time. I'll just give you a little bit of background information on it, though. I wasn't on the board at the time, but I did get elected shortly after that. I did not know about this. The article in the Duluth News Tribune, which you read the headline on, was kind of hidden on the back page because I eventually found a copy of that. And again, I'm doing research on it to do a story on that myself, written story on one of my columns. And so I've talked to a lot of the people that were on the board. Remember, I was on the board as well. And when I got elected, people asked me to be on it because they said, hey, there's really some funny stuff going on. We need somebody that knows parliamentary procedure, something about financing. And when I got elected, I volunteered to become the acting treasurer. The treasurer of this happened, her name is Terry Griffin. We're using her name because this is on all the reports. It's in the Duluth News Tribune. It's all on all the campaign finance reports. It's all on there. So that's where the name comes from. And but you're right. According to the attorney, the letter, and I've got all this stuff. This is all public information from the campaign finance board from the state of Minnesota. According to the lawyer that the Senate District 7 hired, the treasurer, Terry Griffin, had had about $37,000 in unauthorized payments. This was in the years 2008 and 2009. This is according to the attorney. Also according to the attorney, of that amount of money, Terry Griffin, the treasurer, paid back about $15,000, which left a balance that as far as I can see, has never been accounted for, $22,000 that was never accounted for. And to put this in perspective, we can say this was back in 2010 when this came about. $15,000, $22,000 is a big chunk of money for even places like Duluth. We're not not real small, but still $22,000 is a big. You've been involved in campaigns, that's quite a bit of money. And that was the year when Oberstar lost the seat. And there's a lot of people that I've talked to in the DFL that put his losing to the disarray that Senate District 7 was in and the lack of money that they had to contribute. They can't contribute at all, but they could not contribute what they should have been able to have. Remember, Oberstar lost by a very small number of votes. And so, again, I'm a DFLer, have been a DFLer, and I'm not part of the party anymore because I got excommunicated for talking like I am now.
Like
But,
telling the truth?
Yeah, that's something that apparently the DFL in Duluth doesn't like to do. And a little more background that there was also a police report, a complaint filed with the Duluth Police Department. Didn't bring that in, sorry, Marcy. But that was eventually dismissed. That was filed by John Schwetman, who was the chair of the Senate District 7 at the time. There was an internal investigation. This is what I hear from some of the people that were on the board. And some people out on the board, I can't use names, I thought that they call this embezzlement. I'm not sure that's the official name, but unauthorized expenditures. They think that the money was a lot higher than that. As a result of that, there are a lot of the Senate District Board people resigned in disgust. And I was told, again, this is just by hearsay, that they did that because they never got repaid. The headline that you read in the Duluth News Tribune indicates that the campaign finance board fined Terry Griffin $12,000. Of course, there was no follow-up in the Duluth News Tribune. Why? Because the DFL decided to hide it. It did not look good because Oberstar, remember, lost that year. That's when Oberstar lost. And where did the blame? The blame should have been put right on Senate District 7, which is we're only one Senate district, and Congressional District 8, yet it was significant. And it took away energy and resources that should have went in to allow Oberstar, who was an icon of the National Democratic Party, the chairman of the Transportation Committee in Congress, very influential for northern Minnesota, because he made sure a lot of money came back to funding, highway projects. And he lost. I think he lost because of the Senate District 7's embezzlement that happened.
Wow, that is a powerful wave. It's like when you do something over here that's wrong, that wave goes and creates like a tsunami of disaster, and there's the disaster is Oberstar is not bringing in the money that he used to bring into the district. Now, the fellow that you just mentioned, John Schwetman, his name is cropping up these days as a run for the school board against Lana Oswald, right?
Yes, I don't know if he's filed yet, but I understand that he's trying to get the DFL endorsement. And if you get the DFL endorsement in Duluth, you're in with Flynn. You're going to win the election because that's the way it is in Duluth. And of course, since he was a chair during this years, he's one of the DFL operatives, and so don't ask me why he's running. John Schwetman has a little interesting history. He was also the chair of the pro-referendum vote. Remember that went on here last year that passed. He was the chair of that citizen committee to do that. I've never seen him at a school board meeting. He's never asked me anything about when I was on the school board for 8 years. He's never asked me anything about the school, but he was head of that committee. He was also the chairperson, I believe, of Rosie Loeffler Kemp's run here 2 years ago. So he's obviously a DFL operative. He carries a lot of weight in town. I guess he decided for some reason that it's interesting that his campaign committee now Rosie Lotherkimp, who's on the school board, is on his campaign finance committee, as well as David Kirby, who's also running for the board. So it's kind of, they're patting each other on the back again after they helping each other get elected, and now here they are helping each other get reelected, and a new person, which is John Schwetman. And of course he had some involvement, I don't know exactly what. I could speculate on his involvement when he was the chair of Senate District 7. Obviously, when you're a chair of some district, when there's appears to be $22,000, according to their own lawyer, got embezzled, there should be some responsibility held. Of course, this is Duluth, we don't hold anybody responsible for anything. But anyway.
Except the taxpayers to pay the bill, and I will interject here. Okay, so John Schwetman is running for the school district. He basically turned a blind eye to embezzlement in the 7th Senate district. So voters, think about this. Is he going to turn a blind eye to more deviance excuse me, behavior that we've put up with for all these years on our school district? Is that what we want elected to a very important position? And after all, he was the push behind the levy, so it doesn't bother him to increase your taxes to pay for an already big boondoggle in the 709 school district. So is that what you want, to be elected, to have power over your dollars and the education for our children in this district? I really think that's not a very good choice.
Marcia, I have to make an important correction. We don't know what John Schwetman's position was on this. We don't know if he turned a blind eye. He was the one that filed the police report. And as far as I know, he was the one that told the police to dismiss it as well.
Well,
But we know that he was in charge. We know that the Senate district never got the money back. They've repaid, remember this, Terry Griffin repaid about $8,000, but there was still another $22,000 that was unaccounted for, and that happened under John Schwetman's term. That's all we know.
we only know that much, but okay, it doesn't hurt to think about the facts and look at what his actions were. And it's my opinion, not yours. He's turned a blind eye to the reality of what happened. I'm glad he reported it to the police and all that. That looks good on his record, but in the long run, he should have held her accountable. He was not holding her accountable in the eyes of all the people in the Senate district who contributed their hard-earned dollars, but he wasn't accountable to taxpayers either, or when he pushes for a levy and then he wants to get on the school board. I mean, I think the history of his authority that was lacking when he should have been firm in making this person accountable, should not have said, well, let's just forget it.
Well, again,
And that goes on in politics too much around here. That's the problem.
I did get elected to the board shortly after this happened. I was not aware that any of this had happened. Actually, I wasn't aware of it until probably close to a year after I was on the board. Nobody on the Senate District 7 board would talk about it. There was one person on the board who wanted to occasionally bring it up by saying we needed auditing of our books, we needed to have accountable treasurers, we needed real treasury reports and accountability. And whenever it was brought up, and that's how I heard about it, that person was basically literally shut down, sometimes with 4-letter words, and by saying we don't talk about that. And the fact of the matter was, when I did finally find out about it, it's like, ooh, this is pretty bad. But the board, clearly it was a board decision. Schwetman was the chair. Certainly some of the board resigned rather than what I think sweep it under the carpet. It is something, why they swept it under the carpet, this is my opinion, I don't know. when somebody embezzled something and there was clear evidence of that by the campaign finance board, they had to do amended returns. We got 15 pages of this stuff from the board that documented everything, and there was no question about it that there was irregularities in there. And I think most people would call that embezzlement. And why they didn't ask for that money back. Obviously, if somebody embezzled the money, they obviously have wherewithal to pay it back. It's obviously when somebody embezzlement, steals something, whatever you want to call it, there, most of the cases are required to pay it back and have some accountability. And when I found out about this, and I would occasionally start bringing it up, and of course then, it was one of the reasons I got excommunicated, because I wanted, hey, I worked hard for the DFL. The DFL is my party, I'm a union guy, and the money that I put, I donated money to the Senate District 7, quite a bit of money to the Senate District 7 DFL party. And when I found out that a lot of that money that I went was embezzled, did not make me happy, and it should not make anybody happy who believes in any kind of party principles. We can argue over whether or not you like the Democratic Party or not, but in this case, there's a lot of people that do, and a lot of people that give money, and in this case, a lot of the money was stolen and did not go to what they thought was their political aims, which in this case was to, in this case, of course, re-elect Oberstar. Remember, that was a big upset when he lost.
Well, embezzlement is another word for theft. Theft is supposed to be illegal, so a person who has authority, as a chairman does, over a board, has not only the power, but he has the responsibility, if he's an honest person, to make the theft, the embezzler, right in the sight of all those who had contributed money. And of course, the ramification of that is people left. People who were on the board wanted it dealt with, but they didn't force the issue, and so they left in disgust. And so this person, this thief, got
Terry
away with
Griffin.
not paying the indebtedness to the others. Terry Griffiths. She got away with being a thief to all those who had contributed that money, including yourself. And
Yes.
so how come it is other people have to pay the piper, and people in the DFL party who have power and then they run for other offices get away with it? I disagree that that's right, and I think that something should have been done about it, and hopefully this program will wake up some people that might be listening, and maybe you'll start asking some questions, because it seems to me that there should be an investigation that is thorough and that the money is paid back, or she should be sitting in jail spending time with the other criminals that didn't get away with their theft. Is that too harsh to say that?
I think that our politics in America, or certainly everybody knows, they're kind of ugly. I think political parties have to be accountable, and you have accountability right where political parties start. The lowest level of a political party, of the Democratic Party in Minnesota, is on the Senate district level. It's the Senate District 7, which is Duluth area. And yes, if you can't expect the local Democratic Party to be accountable, well, if they're not accountable, you can just imagine what's going on the national level. I'm talking about in both parties here now. And if we can't clean up our own local politics, how do you expect these national people to be clean? Because everybody just turns a blind eye. They turn a blind eye at this level, they turn a blind eye at that level, they turn a blind eye at the national level. Because is that the modus operandi of political parties? And again, I'm not trying to pick on the DFL here. This happens to be what I know about. I'm sure the Republican Party is just as bad. But this is one thing that I do know about. One reason when I was on the board for about 6 years, and I did everything that I could to try to have more accountability and reform. And of course, I eventually got booted off the board because I kept asking questions like this. questions that, it's, I'm the bearer of the bad news. I didn't cause the bad news. Terry Griffin, who was the treasurer, had $22,000, according to the lawyer, of unauthorized expenditures. And if you go back and look at some of the reports, a lot of that went to her personal account, went to her husband. It appears that some of it went into gambling. I mean, this did not go into humanitarian causes, put it that way. Did not go into progressive politics. Went into somebody's back pocket or front pocket, and nothing happened. And I think this should be a call that everybody should really pay attention to what happens. Even small, maybe $22,000 isn't much money when you look at say the school district, where we've lost $30 million in the reserve fund. We have $300 million in the poor plan building, $12 million in unaccountable change orders. But still, this is something that we all belong to. We all belong to, not all of us, but some of us belong to political parties. And if we can't have our own most basic level of association accountable, I think there's something wrong. And I think in this case, it's interesting that you asked me to come and talk about it, because I do know about this. I've been disappointed that the Duluth News Tribune did not do anything. I was even more disappointed, of course, that Senate District 7 has refused now for about 9 years to not only acknowledge it, but to get money back of people that put their hard-earned money into what they believe their politics demanded to make a better world. And their desire to make a better world was stolen.
Well, I'll just go off of that subject momentarily. I won't say what the organization is that I was in, but I was one of the board members, and I got a call from the treasurer who brought up the fact that unauthorized credit card indebtedness had totaled to $40,000. And I got the information, and I went with the current secretary, who had a lot of information that she shared with me. And the reason that the treasurer brought it to my attention is she and her husband were afraid that this credit card indebtedness for this organization that we were in would eventually come back to bite them. Mm-hmm. And so I looked into it, and it turns out the chairman of this group that I was in had just gone out and charged up on this credit card, unbeknownst to any of us on the board, what was going on. And it wasn't that he was doing anything illegal. He was trying to promote our organization, but he wasn't doing it with the authority of the board members. So he refused to sit down and talk with, and I actually went to him first to talk to him. He didn't want to talk, and then I took a couple other people, and they said, yeah, we should take care of this. Well, I had to face him by myself in front of a board, in an event where other congressional area people had come for this meeting, and he kept putting me off of the agenda until almost the end. And I said, now wait a minute here, we're not finishing this meeting until I go over this information. And I had it laid out on the table. And not that it was intimidating, but he wasn't a violent person, so I wasn't afraid. But it was intimidating because he knew what I was going to do, but he did not want to deal with it. And he surely did not want to be called out in front of all these people, but he refused to sit down and talk with us separately. So it was time now to put it out in the open. And my final statement was, since none of us agreed to these charges, we feel that since that credit card is in your name, you're going to pay down this debt. None of us are going to be responsible. No more money is coming out of the coffers of this organization to pay down an indebtedness that you charged up. And he had to pay it down. Unfortunately, it wasn't good for the organization, because it kind of broke up after that, because people became disillusioned that one person was making decisions without we were a puppet board for him. And I'm not a puppet to anybody's board or anything. So it fell on me because my friend didn't know what to do about it, and it just fell on me to do something about it. And I think it's time that more people just took the information that they have and go with it as best you can. And yeah, there'll probably be some ramifications for your being willing to tell the truth, but it has to be done, because I surely don't want this person on the school board wasting and misappropriating or overlooking misappropriations. I'm not going to say that he would misappropriate, but he did it once, so his record does not stand as a very good representative if he's elected to the school district.
Well, just a couple comments that brings to mind is that I've been on lots of boards, including the school board, for 8 years. And people that go into elected politics want to get elected, and also people that get in government bureaucracies often do that because they think that's going to give them privilege. Being an elected official, you have some kind of privilege. Being a head of a bureaucratic organization, you are the boss, and you have some kind of privilege. And with that privilege comes, you don't have to follow the rules. And this is a real common thing, I think. I think that is the norm. And now, there's always, that Reagan saying, you must trust, but you must verify. Our whole society knows that people are power hungry, particularly politicians that who wants to really get elected? You must suspect somebody's motive if they really want to get elected. In most cases, that motive is to have power over other people. And if it's power over other people by saying, hey, I have privilege here, I don't have to follow your rules because, hey, I'm an elected official and whoopee-doo. I think it's important that people recognize that's a trait of people that go into these kind of organizations. Another thing that your talk brought to mind was when you're on small boards, there's a lot of pressure to conform. There's a lot of pressure. People say, well, I don't want to be responsible. When I brought up some of the unauthorized change orders on the school board, the $12 million ones, I was told, well, if you don't like it, you can go.
Yes.
And people have also told me, I used to work for the federal government, contract administrator, and my CO at the time used to tell me, he said, hey, you are responsible. If you're on the board, you're responsible, you better resign. I never resigned because I was a witness to what was happening. And yet many people think they're on the board. They don't dare say anything because, one, they think they may be held culpable, which they really should be. And so they make the election to say nothing, even though they know it's not right. But certainly there's lots of good people that get elected and in bureaucracies. But on small boards, there's a lot of pressure when there's nobody looking over your shoulder and there's no accountability. Just like Terry Griffith, there was obviously no accountability in the Senate District 7. I don't know if there is still, if there's any accountability. But people, it's tough, and that's why it's doubly important for people to be on boards and to ask questions and to verify the thing. That's why we have accountants. That's why we have rules. That's why we have spreadsheets, is to make sure that money, even on a small board like a Senate District 7 board, they are responsible. They are legally responsible, and if you violate by fabricating stuff, it was a violating the law. Remember, Terry Griffin was fined $12,000 by the board for violating the law. And of course, he should have been also fined that by the Senate District 7 and should have got their money back, but that's another question. So people must have to pay attention. They must go on boards. You must scrutinize everybody else's work. Sometimes people make errors. Sometimes, in this case, it was clear embezzlement.
Well, I'm sorry we are out of time, so we got to wrap it up. Thank you very much, Art, for coming in again.
Marcia, anytime.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, folks.